Today's guest is the Chief Information Officer of AT&T Wireless Services. At age 13, he made a promise to himself that he would support his family no matter what. This became an influential component of the passion that he's brought to his work. He lives by the theory that you can always ask, but is not inclined to take no for an answer. He often comes off as a tough guy who makes the difficult decisions, but those who know him well speak of his big heart and intense loyalty. He both startles and charms his staff as he sings happy birthday to them and writes farewell songs to those who are moving on. I'm also told that the key to determining his mood is watching for which shade of red his face turns when he's laughing, angry, or embarrassed. Let's see how much of the palette we can uncover. Please welcome Mike Benson.
Thank you. Very good, very good.
So where did you grow up?
Grew up in Edmonds, Washington, and had a pretty much normal life. Had an older brother, younger. I was pretty young. Always got in trouble. Was the one stirring up a lot of the problems. Got blamed for everything, whether I did it or not.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you were always blamed when it wasn't you.
Yeah.
And the older brother didn't end up taking the heat for you?
No, never.
It was always you.
Just me.
What were you like in high school?
High school, an athlete. I played football, I wrestled, and tried baseball. Wasn't very good at baseball, but very much in sports. Very much, people call me a jock. And when I was in high school.
Did you like that?
Yeah, for the most part.
Yeah. When did you first know you wanted to get into IT?
I was going to college at Western Washington. I was also working at McDonald's. Through my high school years, I worked at McDonald's and got to be a swing manager and got to work up in Bellingham, Washington. And at that time, it's about 1975, McDonald's was doing most of their inventory and their financial closes on a little TI, Texas Instrument computer with an acoustic coupler where you had the phone, you stuck it in, and you transmit data. And I said, well, this is kind of cool stuff, so how does this work? So that got me really interested in the business. So, and at the time, I got married in college, and my wife didn't like me coming home smelling like onions, and computer work would be a hell of a lot better.
Did you enjoy college?
Yeah, for the most part, I liked it. More serious than I was in high school. Part of that had to do with me growing up like at 13. My dad was pretty much out of work from the time I was about 13 till I was a senior in high school. And so that drove me that I didn't want to be leaving my family or leaving myself without an income. So I was very determined that I was going to get through college, find a job, and be successful. And I also got married in the middle of college, which is not the thing I would advise anybody to do.
Certainly adds to the seriousness, doesn't it?
It does, and the funny thing is you don't feel the stress back then as you may do today on things. So that probably made me focus more. You know, I was a C student in high school and a B to A student in college because I was very much determined and focused on it, and between work and school, that was my focus for my college years. And
was college easy for you?
Certain aspects were. I'm good in math, so math was fairly easy. Economics, a little challenging in economics, but for the most part, school was fairly easy. Once I was focused on it, it was pretty easy.
Then when it came to getting your first job, there was some urgency to get that first job, wasn't there?
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Well, again, I was married and senior year of college, and my wife at the time got pregnant, and basically graduated, and I had about 3 months to find a job before our son was born. And it took me 3 months, found a job, and 2 days later, my son was born.
2 days after you found the job, or 2 days after you
2 days
started?
after I started working.
So you had to take time off immediately?
Well, I went to work. The funny thing is, took my wife to the hospital, and I said, well, I've got to go to work. You know, it's day 3, better go to work. And my boss says, what are you doing here? And sent me off back home.
Back home. All about priorities.
Yeah, and so then I sat there in the waiting room at the time, waiting for my son to be born.
How did you manage that job search when you had the 3 months?
I pretty much went across the country. This is 1976, and the economy at the time and jobs, people were looking for people, businesses were looking for experienced people who wanted to get in data processing, and it was very difficult to find a job. So I went looking up and down Washington, up to Everett, down to Tacoma, over to Eastern Washington, back and forth. And the funny thing at the time, my wife and I, last month, she was off of work. She took me around looking for jobs back in Tacoma. We're doing one more look around. And it's about 4 o'clock on an afternoon, and I'm exhausted of going and applying for jobs and finding out you couldn't do anything. She said, well, there's one more down the street. It's right here. It's this company called Kelly Farquhar. And I said, well, that's a funny name. What do they do? Well, it's a frozen food distributor. I said, okay, I'll go in. So I went in and basically put my application in and went home. And about 2 days later, they called up. So I went in and talked to this organization. It's a family organization, small at the time. And basically almost pleaded with them, saying, I need a job. And my boss at the time accepted that, and that's where I started.
And what was your role?
Pretty much a programmer, working in old technology, COBOL programming with cards and maybe some floppy diskettes. That was a long time ago. So,
yeah.
But yeah, just doing programs and wrote all your programs during the day, tested them at night.
Right.
Because
they
had
had to run all night.
Right.
Back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole different world.
Sure is.
What surprised you about that experience?
I'm not sure if there's really. What probably has surprised me was, which is what I love about the profession, is I got to learn about what everybody did. What the financial people did,
right.
What the accounts payable, what they did in sales, what they did in marketing. So that intrigued me. That's what I loved about, and I still love the job this way, because I get to know and do and be and participate in all aspects of the business. So I'm not being put into one little area. I've got the whole area to look at, which is a fantastic part of the job. It's what I love the most.
Then there was an invitation for you to relocate to California. Why did you decide to go?
The company was bought out. It's a family organization bought out by a public company. Opportunity to get promoted into a more management position of some analysts, and an opportunity to go to an area of Monterey, California. That's a pretty nice area. So I took the family and took the job and said, it's for the career, it'll help. Again, back to my stability and looking for work at the time and the stability in the family, that I took the family down to California. And the funny thing is, you're up here in the Northwest, everything's pretty green, it's pretty hilly, and you come into Monterey and you come out of the valley of Monterey and it's flat, and all of a sudden, geez, I've never seen anything this flat before. So very wonderful place to live. I advise anybody who wants to live there when they have money, not when you're just starting
poor,
off.
yeah. I don't think any place in California is good when
Right.
you're poor. How did your job responsibilities increase throughout your time there?
Got to participate in more activities with the business, got involved with the business, started becoming an expert in certain aspects of the business, like inventory management, distribution, and at certain points was asked if I wanted to get out of the IT or the information business and into being an inventory manager or production control manager, and pretty much said, no, I like what I'm doing, but so they liked the things I was doing, they liked that I was interested in the business, and I added value, not only in how I develop programs or develop systems or applications, but that I also got an opportunity to share my ideas on how the business should be run.
Did you feel like you were a really young guy to be doing that?
Yeah, at first, you start off and thinking, gee, you look up and everybody's older. And you're the young, you're 22, 23, 24 years old, and you're looking up and saying, gee, this is kind of neat. I'm talking to people that are 40. Oh my God, there's somebody up there that's 40 years old.
It's all different now, though, isn't it?
Different, yeah. Everybody I look around is younger.
Yeah, a little humbling. But then about 8 years later, you decided to leave the company. Was it hard to leave?
Yes. The company was bought out again by J.R. Simplot at the time. Headquarters in Boise, Idaho. Basically asked me if I wanted to move to Boise, and I didn't necessarily want to move there. If I was going to move, I'd move back to the Northwest, where I was born and raised. And yeah, it was emotional. It was about 8 years working for the same company, part of the family, and yeah, pretty emotional time for me to leave. But took the opportunity, moved the family back up here. Yeah, a few tears shed at that time, leaving that company and leaving some great people.
Yeah. Are you still in touch with them?
Some of them I am. It's strange. You run into a few of them every now and then, you know. And yeah, that's about the 3 of them.
Yeah, IT is a pretty small community.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, you tend to trip over the same people over and over
Yes,
again.
you do.
Then you got a job at ATL. And how did that job search differ from your prior one? You now have 8 years of experience under your belt.
Experience-wise, got me into the door into a very high-tech ultrasound manufacturing equipment company, looking for somebody. Didn't have experience in MRP systems at the time, but had a good experience with the tool sets they were using. Mm-hmm. So they got me in, basically opened the door up, and I basically said, here's my skill set, and they were looking for a manager, and at this point they were looking for more of a management skill set than they were for the technology skill sets. So I accepted the job, moved into that position, and learned a lot about, you know, I got myself certified with APEX, which is a standard for production control, inventory, MRP type solutions, and learned the business and learned how things were being done, and then learned to develop folks. That's probably the first time I really had a large organization that I had to worry about, care about, develop, mentor, and also do things that are not that pleasant, you know, disciplinary actions when things don't go very well.
Would you rather manage people or projects?
People now.
But then?
But then probably projects. I got some of the most exciting things in my career have been project related, and then there are some things that are very much people related. At this point, the challenges are the people. For me to be a successful leader is making the folks who work for me or work in my department successful. Mm-hmm. That's the big thing, and that's challenging. That's more challenging than doing a project. Do
you miss playing with the technology?
No. Sorry. No. It's easier to pick up the phone and say, I got this problem. Can you fix it for me?
It is.
Than worry about it. From a technology standpoint, from an analytical standpoint and trying to do a problem solving, no, I love that. Love problem solving, love to do the analysis, love to challenge. One of the things, if you ask my staff, I like to challenge. I like to be there and say, are you sure you can do this? Because I look at it and say, you know, if you're committed, you're going to push back. And we're going to have a nice conversation. So I like that, see how committed an employee is or somebody is on a project or on an initiative. So that's big to me because that tells me they're committed to them and the success is going to be there based on their commitment.
Right. Assuming that they have the skills that they need. But you chose to leave there after about 3 years. What brought upon that decision?
The environment, it was, you know, I spent 8 years with one company through acquisitions that I loved and liked the sense of a family. Moving into the ATL's environment, family picture was not there, the caring of individuals wasn't the same, so the culture was not what I was looking for. And only spent 3 years there, and there was a change in an organization. My boss was let go, and I was given a big increase in pay to stay, and you know, pay is not everything in some cases. It's your friendship, it's your relationships you have with a lot of folks.
So did you feel at all like you were leaving out of loyalty to your boss at the time?
To some extent. And the opportunity for now AT&T, but at the time McCaw Cellular Communications came around the door, and that was very interesting.
And how did that come about?
One of the employees I was working with basically you know, we were unhappy that our boss was let go and I said, well, maybe I should start looking for another opportunity, you know. Sometimes it takes a while to look, and Marie pushed me and said, well, there's this company called McCaw Cellular Communications that's looking for people. Why don't you go talk to them? So, you know, I basically made a call and ended up having an interview with them, and that's how my career started there.
And then 2 days after you accepted that job, something strange sort of happened at the company.
Yeah, the job was for me to be the director of their information systems on their paging side of the business. And my job was to come in and build an organization. At this time, McCaw had gone through a lot of acquisitions, acquiring several properties. And in the paging side of the business, they had about 5 different billings and customer care systems, and they're looking to consolidate that. And they didn't really have a good IT organization, didn't have any. So they wanted to build an IT organization. They wanted to have a software company develop a new billing system and care system for them. And I was going to build the organization. This development organization called Digital Equipment's going to build the application. When they're done with it, then I'll deploy it to all the sites that we have.
So they're going to do all that for you?
They're going to do all that for me, and I just had to staff up, because the staff was one. There was only one person there. I said, okay, I accept that job. And then 2 days later, they called me back and said, well, we just fired Digital Equipment from developing the software. Do you think we can still do it? And so I'm still working at ATL, and I said, well, we need to discuss this. So I said, let's discuss this tonight. So about 5 o'clock on a Tuesday night or Wednesday night, we're having a meeting in one of the boardrooms and basically saying, this is what we're going to do. I probably need to get some consultants to come in and help. I knew some consultants through my experience. I brought them in. There was probably about 8 or 9 of us. Spent the summer of '87 in a closed and confined room. Started it in June. Finished the project in October. Built the systems, built an organization, or started building an organization. We probably had maybe 15 people or 20 people at that time. Built a data center, put the equipment in, communications, the whole 9 yards, and we missed the schedule by 1 month.
Which is
So that was
pretty
very good.
amazing.
It was very amazing, which then sprung me into the cellular side of the business. That they wanted me to do that same miracle on that side of the business.
Were you considered a hero? Like, did they see it as a month late, or did they see it as superhuman?
No, they saw it as a superhuman and very much a hero.
Which is great.
Yeah, it was very good.
More often than not, they're saying, well, it was good, but you missed it by 30 days.
No, not this case, because they were taking high risk. They didn't know what they were into, and at that time they were growing tremendously.
And what was your role when you moved over to the other side of the business?
Director of development. Now the business was getting bigger. Cellular was their main thrust. Craig McCaw was focused on building out this wireless technology. It was broken into regions. There were 5 regions within the country, and they wanted one new billing system. Same thing I did in the paging side to do in the cellular side. So we went off to Minneapolis, commuted back and forth between Seattle and Minneapolis. Monday morning, take an airplane northwest to Minneapolis. Friday night, come home from Minneapolis and build a billing system. Took a little longer, took 18 months. Business is very young, immature. To make decisions was more challenging. The business was growing fast, rapidly changing, where the paging business had been around for 30 years, so it was a little bit more stable.
Did you find that the people who worked in those different divisions were very different?
No, not really. The nice thing that attracted me to the company was this whole entrepreneur type spirit, whether it was in paging or was in cellular, that was there, and a willingness to take risk and a willingness to try different things and not be afraid of making mistakes and learning from those mistakes and moving forward. So even though it took me 18 months, no one came in and said, you missed that project by 3 months or 4 months. They thought I was a hero again, even though it took a lot longer, a lot more energy, time away from the family, time devoted to it.
But then you made also a major decision during this time that backfired on you. Can you want to tell us about that?
The commuting back and forth was challenging for the family, and when we finished that project, I basically said, I need to find, if I'm going to work for this company, I need to find a place where I can stay kind of home. And there was an opportunity for me to do that, and that would have been in West Palm Beach, Florida, for one of the regions, and be their vice president for their information technology group as a region, not have to travel nearly as much, and all the travel would be is once in a while back to Seattle and then within Florida. So I took the family and said this would be good for my career, moved them from Seattle. A little more challenging now. My son's 13 at the time, I think, and my daughter is 11, I think, around there, 13 or 14, and 11 or 12, and moved him. My son was very disappointed in us leaving, was unhappy, but we moved anyways, and we pretty much settled in, and things seemed to be okay. But I believe from that experience was probably the end of my marriage, because I drug my family around a little too much and didn't build enough stability. So it's an important thing, I think, in retrospect, that you got to balance your personal life with your work life, and to me, I was one-sided. So that was probably one of my biggest mistakes that I made, was moving my family around from here and there and everything. But the funny thing is, if there's a funny thing of this, is my son's now a senior in high school, and we are planning on moving him back to Seattle, because that's where he wants to be. He wants to live in Seattle. He doesn't want to live in Florida. And 1 month before he graduates from high school, he comes to us and said, I don't want to go to Seattle. I want to stay here. So we had to change all our plans. You know, we had him try to register here at the University of Washington. We changed those plans, had to quickly find a college for him in Florida. Ended up going to be a Gator, University of Florida. And he still lives there. And I saw him like last week. I was down in Orlando and we got to see him. We played a little golf and he still can beat me in golf.
Do you remind him of what a big fuss he made?
Yes, do.
Yes, yeah.
But he's pretty much going to stay in the South. And part of that is he grew up at a time and found some friends, and that's what's bonded him.
But the Florida experience wasn't all bad. What are some of the accomplishments that you're really proud of during that job?
Probably some of the biggest things that I did was help them build some new what we call credit and decision support systems that are now being used for the whole company. Spearheaded that. Build out some call centers for them, customer care centers, and just built a staff and stabilized an environment that was pretty volatile. Helped build the organization, learn more about the business. So I'm pretty proud of those things.
Tell us about the billing system project. You said that was one of your mistakes.
I basically, when I finished the Minneapolis billing project, there was a time when the business was still wrestling with, is that the right decision? And I had not been as committed as I should have been and said, yes, this is probably the best thing we should do for us, and we can get off of this legacy system that's 20 years old at the time, and we're still on it today, and it's 30 years old. And didn't challenge. I kind of rolled over. And from that, when you're committed to something, it's back to my commitment deal, you need to push. You need to push, and you should let them say, or whoever you're working with, no, I don't want to do that, as opposed to me, okay, I understand, walk away. I just walked away from something I should have been more committed to.
Why do you think you did that?
Probably doubted myself in certain places. Said, is this really the right thing? Even though I've done this before, is this really the right thing? I start questioning what I'd gone through and what I said was successful, and question, I'm back to being perfect, right? Trying to think, well, if I would have done a little bit better, it could have been the perfect thing. So this isn't really the perfect thing, and maybe there is something out there better.
Right, so maybe that other thing is better, instead of seeing the good.
Right.
But then after 5 years, you did move back.
Yep.
What encouraged you to move back?
A phone call from a good friend of mine, John Chappell at the time, called me and lured me back to the Northwest with going back into the paging business. With the time now it's been called messaging, to do narrowband PCS license, which is a new spectrum, a new frequency out there to do two-way communication with a paging device. And get to do a whole new business model, new challenges, new opportunities, set the industry on fire, rejuvenate this whole industry. And it's great, the sounds is good. So I toddle off back to Seattle, and the second week I got back here, he quits and goes off and works for, and he took a job for a lifetime. He got to be the president of the Canadian sports teams.
Wow.
And did that with John McCaw at the time.
And how come you didn't go follow him over there?
He didn't ask me to come there. That would have been interesting too.
Would have done that. But by the time you came back, it really wasn't McCaw Cellular anymore.
No,
by this point,
AT&T. We just finished the acquisition or the merger with AT&T, and so the world changed to some extent. We became no longer a regional companies, but a national company and a national focus. And with that, you had to make some national choices and some decisions. And in the paging and messaging business, they said, we're either going to focus on the wireless cellular side, or we're going to focus on the messaging. And they had more invested in the wireless side. So spent 3 years there, 3 years, I think 3 years, and helped them sell that portion of the business off and focus only on the wireless side.
And can you talk a little bit about some of the differences between McCaw Cellular and AT&T Wireless? What are some of the things that you saw change?
Most of the changes had to do with us just getting big, whether it was part of AT&T or McCaw. We were, when I first started with the company, we had 1,000 employees, and today we have almost 30,000 employees just on the wireless side alone. At that time, we got bigger. It was a big push for being national. So instead of being this entrepreneur, small startups, companies, you became a full-fledged, full operating company. You had to worry about the bottom line more than acquiring the next market and things of that nature. So those changed. I don't know if that was part of AT&T or that was just the evolution of the business and where it was going.
And were you more comfortable in one environment than the other?
Double-edged sword.
Yeah.
You love the entrepreneur spirit, the can-do, try, let's go get it done. But you also, in your profession, learn some disciplines, and some of those disciplines are, you have a project plan, you have people help you do requirements, you have, you know how to do the process, and in an entrepreneur spirit, there's no process, there's no requirements.
We just do it.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Get it done. My first job there, I spent $2 million on buying hardware, and I wrote a letter to the vendor saying this is what I like. Didn't have a purchasing system, didn't do a PO, didn't have to have it approved. Today you have those things. So in today's world, you have a few more disciplines, and most IT folks like the discipline as well as having some. So it's a balance.
Yeah,
you got to have some of a balance.
A little bit of a safety net in that discipline. How was it environmentally as some of the big people started leaving the company?
That the time when Craig sold it, Craig left. Jim Bartsdale, who was the president at the time, left and went off to work for Netscape, right? And made a boatload of money. But we're regions, so seeing some of these people leave at headquarters or a certain person leave from this region didn't have a huge impact on the whole group. It was just, we grew up and the business was changing. Some people thought that AT&T, big AT&T would take over all the wireless business, and so they left early, and to date that hasn't happened. In fact, we did a tracker stock and we're kind of our own separate organization, and in some cases bigger than AT&T, which is real strange.
Yeah. Do you feel the hand of AT&T or not? Not at all?
Certain aspects you do. There's certain things they definitely worry about. In my profession, they definitely worry about security. They do worry about the presence of a national company, the reputation of AT&T. So you do get involved in that. In certain pockets, we try to do a what they call a bundled offer, where you can get your wireless services and your landline services and your local long distance and now cable, right, all on one bill. And the businesses right now are so different. It's hard to do that, and it's hard to service that. And the technologies are so different, and your questions you may have when you're on your cellular phone are going to be different than your cable.
Right.
Your cable is, this doesn't work, or how come I don't get this channel? On your phone I was in Topeka, Kansas, and I didn't get this call. So they're different, and how they get the service are different. So I think we're learning from an industry that having one bill may not be the best. What the consumers really want is to have the best, if AT&T is giving me all those services, give me the best price.
One of the things that you did as you were in the messaging business was that you improved the call center pretty dramatically. I think the information was that you improved that from a service level of 23% up to 80%.
Yes.
What are some of the things you did to get that kind of improvement?
The funny thing is, you would think that there would be information technology or IT solutions, and it really wasn't. It was a lot of basic process improvements, a lot of sense of urgency. A call center has, any given time, 100, 200 folks on the floor answering the calls, and they need development, coaching. It's an entry, in some cases, an entry-level position into companies. And you just got to make sure that they're part of the family and they sense that part of the family, and you give them the support you can. So it's a lot of focus, a lot of attention to people than it is to the technology. It's an environment that, in some cases, if you don't like to be in a structured environment, I wouldn't advise anybody to be in a call center, because you need to be there on time.
Right.
You need to take your breaks on time, come back from your breaks on time, and they have quality metrics that they hold people accountable to. So we focused in that area. We focused on getting the right people there, training the folks on the type of services we have. Then it was creating the latest and greatest customer care solution out there.
Yeah. So you really do need to back up and look at the people side of it and not the systems infrastructure.
Right.
And was that something you were very comfortable with?
Yeah, I've grown through that. If you ask some of the folks, I love the people side. I love to have fun. I love to challenge people in what they're doing. And so people's a big part of it. And that's the other thing that, in this profession, you do get to interact, if you really want to. It's the beauty of this. You get to interact with folks if you want to. You can be a systems analyst, a business analyst, you can be a manager, or you can become very technical and not necessarily interface with individuals and work on how can I make this code faster, how can I make this application more efficient, how can I make this the best thing there is. So it's a nice balance in an organization. So you definitely get two sets of groups, right? You get the introverts and you get the extroverts.
And the interesting thing about it being so successful now, just in general in IT, is that you can be both at the same time. You can be an introvert for a little while, and then you can go take a job in that more extroverted way.
Right.
And it's actually easier to manage people in that way now than it ever was before. So now you've been the VP of Retail and Distribution for a while, and the CIO leaves.
Right.
So what did you do to get that CIO spot?
A couple things. One is Steve Elfman at the time was the CIO, and he left, and very good friend of mine, and we do gourmet club or cook gourmet foods together, and so I was very upset that he was leaving, and I was willing to jump ship and say I'm going to go with you, and Steve advised me and said maybe you should stay and see if you get the CIO job, and I said, they're probably going to look outside the company. And he said, well, you should go try. So I picked up the phone and talked to Mohan, who's the CEO now, and basically said, I'm really interested in this job, and if I don't get this job, I'm going to leave. So I really put it in front of him and saying, this is what, and he could either say yes or no. Luckily, he said yes.
Yeah, it's almost a bit of an ultimatum in a way.
Yeah, it was, and he respected my honesty, because he said, could I give you any more responsibility? And I says, no, I already got enough responsibility. Don't need to have any more. I just want the job. If I'm going to really have more responsibility, I want the whole thing. And then he said, if I gave you more money, and I said, well, money's not, at this case, money's not the situation. There's not enough money for this. If you really love this job, then money's not the situation. It's really the love of the job and the love of the people that you work with, and money's secondary.
So is it the title of it that appealed to you?
Part of it's the title, part of it is the opportunity to influence other parts of the organization that I could do to some extent, a little more challenging than being the CIO and help lead the whole organization.
What are some of the biggest challenges that you're facing now as the CIO?
Probably the biggest ones is the company went public in the time that Steve left. So now we're more of a public company, and so the days of huge budgets and huge capital expenditures have changed. We've got to worry about what the analysts and what the business thinks every quarter. Every quarter we get graded. When you're not a public company or you're hidden behind AT&T, you don't have that. So that's changed the behavior to some extent on results. Results are very important to the organization, and they were in the past, but it's just even more so. It's more so what you tell the analysts you're going to do the next quarter, and then they grade you. So there's a lot of changes from that perspective. A lot of and I knew that we probably would go through some of these things, that if we don't get the gross ads, the new subscribers that we plan on getting, that we would have to slow some projects down, stop doing some things. Luckily, we haven't had that situation. We've done real well, and we continue to grow well. This industry is just a fabulous industry. But there's certain parts you have to be more efficient. So you got to look for ways of building applications or buying applications that are more efficient and provide better service and better quality to your business.
So what do you really like most about being the CIO?
What do I like most about being the CIO? I think I like the interaction with the folks. The funny thing is I got a baseball bat from one of our hardware vendors for storage devices. And it was kind of getting me to go to the Mariners game, and it's very challenging to get out in the middle of a day or even at night to go to a Mariners game. But I got this baseball bat. So what I like to do, because I like to get people, I like to put people on the spot. So I carry the baseball bat around the office. And so I come down the halls and they go, "What do you got that baseball bat for?" And they're all worried about, what's he going to do with that? So
new way to manage layoffs.
Yeah. So I like to be visible. I like what I think for me is being visible with the groups, try to help support them, because they're the ones, I have close to 3,000 employees. They're the ones that make the success, not me.
Right.
And they're the ones that have all the knowledge and have all the ideas. I surely don't. I'm so far removed from the day-to-day activities that I rely on them. So I'm just trying to help them, lead them wherever they need assistance, try to help them. Every time I go to a road trip, and I was on a road trip 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, where I went to Pittsburgh, where we have staff in Pittsburgh. Then I went to Paramus, where we have staff in Paramus, New Jersey.
Lovely.
Then Greensboro, and then West Palm Beach. And basically, you tell everybody what you're doing, you tell everybody your vision, your direction, and you open up the questions. I like that. I think you need to be visible, and you have to do that all the time, because to get your message out to 3,000 employees, you have to say it quite a bit.
Right. What don't you like about it?
There's times you have to make some tough calls. I've had to make some tough calls on certain employees, and say this isn't working and you got to let them go. It's probably the hardest thing. And whether I was a CIO or a manager, that's probably one of the hardest things.
Yeah.
Is people who are not performing to the level you want, or just don't fit. It may not be performance, it just may not fit in the culture, may not fit in the business, and you have to say, we have to part our ways. So that's probably the challenging.
And you sort of had something about that from back before, when your boss was laid off, when your boss was fired, and I think you said that when you look back on it, even though you were angry, you could sort of see it as a matter of fit.
Right.
It's sort of the maturity.
Definitely a matter of fit.
Yeah, it's hard to admit it.
Right.
Yeah.
It definitely is.
But you have to do that. And with each promotion, you've said that you see more of the company.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that?
When you are a manager, your visibility of a department or an area is pretty much that department and then the surrounding areas. So when I was doing, let's say, retail and distribution, I had involvement with a little bit with customer care, mostly with the sales organization. And then when you get to further in the organization, you get more visibility to a whole bunch of different things. Things that you didn't even think that went on in the company. You learn a lot more things. The job requires you, in some cases, I love to share stuff, and there's certain things I can't share. Mm-hmm. And that probably eats at you and says, I'd love to share this, but I can't share this with these people. So you basically wait, and then rumors get out there, right. And you've got to basically say, well, that's a rumor, and you can't really act on a rumor.
So you feel like you're lying. You're lying to them.
To some extent, you might be lying. You might feel like you're lying to them.
I wanted to talk a little bit about loyalty. You've now been with the company for 13 years, and that's pretty rare. Were you ever tempted to leave?
A couple times. When I went to the paging side, back to the paging side, and John Chappell called me, he only did that job for a couple of years and came back and went to work for a company called Nextel Properties, and asked me if I'd come over and be the CIO for them. And I almost left. But the situation in my personal life, I was going through a divorce at the time, and the job was in Minneapolis. I said no. Mm-hmm. I said, no, I better stay here. And then with Steve leaving, I was very tempted to move on and go with Steve. And with some counseling from him and just the company, I still love the company, even though it's gone from McCaw to AT&T, and it went from 3,000 to 30,000 employees, let's say. The company is still a great place to work. It's still a great opportunities there. The industry, the technology is fabulous. Now we're doing more with data and voice and on one device. Those are wonderful things to be working on. So the industry is just a great place. And there's still a few of us 13-year veterans still out there in the company, which is real nice. A smaller
and smaller group, though, I imagine.
Yeah.
But you do seem to move up every few years. What's the next move?
Do I have a next move? If there is a next move, it would probably be outside of IT. I'm probably at a point where I would go either into, I love call centers, I love customer care. It's an area that, and I've done a little bit of that when I was in the messaging side. So I would definitely look at opportunities outside of IT into the business assets. So that would be fun.
Do you think you'd stay with AT&T through the rest of your career?
Yeah, I think so. It would take some unique opportunities to say, yeah, I'm going to leave. If I was offered an opportunity in the Northwest for another wireless company doing similar things, that might not be a bad idea. There aren't that many around.
Yeah.
Sprint's in Kansas City. I'm not going
Not
to
going
Kansas
there.
City.
How would you describe your management style?
Well, I would think that I'm as direct as possible, and sometimes I question that, because in the last couple of days I've sent voicemails out 4 or 5 times repeating myself and thinking, was I not clear enough? But that's just the nature of the business. So trying to be direct,
We'd hate to think that the voicemail system wasn't working in your company. That would be a problem.
It would be. But being direct, very much team focus. I believe that teamwork's more important than being a hero. I think that in the long run, teamwork will pay off its dividends. Heroes come and go. The ones who come and steamroll over somebody to get something done. At the end of the day, it's a team. And so I'm very big on team. I'm very big on communication, sharing of information across the organization, sharing what's going on outside of the IT as well as what's going on inside of the IT organization. If I can, share as much as I possibly can to my staff, and I probably stress that to my direct reports, that what I share, I would love for you to share with your staff. And I look at their performance and their appraisal based on how well they share their staff, because everybody wants to know what's going on. Right. The big thing is sharing of information and knowing what's the vision of the organization, what do we stand for, what are we trying to accomplish, how are we doing, what our results are, and that information needs to be shared on a frequent basis.
Do you consider yourself to be a hands-off manager or a hands-on manager?
Probably half and half. It depends. As staff and as colleagues of mine take on a role and I can see they can handle it, I'm pretty much hands-off. If I need to get in hands, I will. It depends on the situation and what's going on. But for the most part, I'm pretty much hands-off. Give them the ideas, give them the direction, go make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Even though you ask lots of questions.
Yeah, I just love asking questions. That's one of my favorite things to do, is to sit in the meeting and drill down a whole bunch of questions and find out, well, how are we doing? I want to know how knowledgeable you are. How well are you with knowing the subject you're on? How well do you know the applications?
So it sounds like you're not really asking because you want to know, but you're asking because you want to see if they know.
Right.
It's more important. When I think about managing, I always think that there are 3 different kinds of managing. There's managing up, managing down, and managing laterally. Which one do you feel is most important, and which are you best at?
Probably, that's a tough one. Managing laterally in today's world, in the world that I work, is probably the most important thing. Managing down, to some extent. Managing up, I'm not a big person for managing up. In some cases, I have a bias. In some cases, it comes across phony to me. Managing up is my results, my staff's results, and what they do for the company. Making sure my peers are happy, that's the lateral part, are happy, and I'm meeting their expectations, as opposed to making sure I get in to talk to Mohan and I've got the right deal and I've sold him on all these things. I'd rather have the staff, I'd rather have a colleague of mine, basically say, and IT did this for us, and IT did that for us. That's what I like.
Have you had challenges in terms of getting people to be respectful of IT, other people in the organization, or because it's a technology company, does that happen pretty easily?
It happens somewhat easily. They always want more. They always want it done faster. They are very willing to give me more money to get things done, and sometimes you want to say, no, don't give me more money. I have enough money and I have enough things on my plate. So I think that the company respects IT, thinks it's a critical piece. It's also very demanding, wants excellence out of its IT organizations, out of its systems, and we should be providing that.
Because you have technical people throughout the company, do they seem to think that they could do your department's job better than they do?
Certain areas in engineering, always engineering groups are always going to debate and say, well, if I had responsibility for that, we'd have this problem solved.
Yeah, I could do this in my garage in a weekend.
Right, and guess what? So do our IT folks look at engineering and say, well, if I had responsibility for the cellular switches, we wouldn't have these problems.
Right.
So it's a two-way street. We're both critical of each other to some extent.
Well, it also sounds like continued growth is always important for you, but you never went and got an advanced degree, or at least you haven't to date. Why is that?
I'm not big on them. I'm not sure, for me personally, I'm not sure they would add additional value to what I believe my role is in my career and in my life. That's just me personally. I've seen a lot of people who do have their MBAs, and they're not doing anything with them. And they don't seem like they improved any better than what they were before they got their MBA program. Did it make them more well-rounded? I'm not positive on that. I've seen some of those. And then there are other ones who do real well.
Right.
For me, it was not something that motivated me. I wasn't motivated to do that. I'm happy what I'm doing. I think I've got an opportunity to do a lot more. Could I have been a CEO of a company if I got an MBA? Possibility. Do I want to be a CEO? Probably not. There's a lot, I mean, as you go up, there's a lot of headaches with it too.
Yes, there are.
What if you could be far away and still be close to everyone and everything that's important to you? If you could talk to anyone in your family the instant you thought about them? Or have a meeting with foreign business associates like you were in the same room? What if you could have the information you need come to you when you wanted it? And you had the power to make all the pieces of your life come together more than you ever imagined. Welcome to the future of wireless from AT&T. Your universe is getting smaller, and staying at the center of it just keeps getting easier. Wireless from AT&T. Your world close at hand.
In the last couple of years, we've seen a great deal of convergence. Basically, your information from your home, from your work, your family life, everything coming together into one little neat package. And very much, a couple years back, you wouldn't have thought something like AT&T and At Home working together, or Time Warner and AOL working together. My question is AT&T Wireless a leader or a follower?
Good question. We are a leader in certain areas. We're definitely a leader in technology. We have chosen our technology from our protocol that we use in the wireless side as a leader standpoint. We are leading with some of the neat offers we're doing. We are hopefully a leader with data and voice combined. We've done a product called CDPD, which is our cellular digital packet data. It's been out there for 3 or 4 years. If Kendra was here, she would tell you we've been the leader. We just did a poor job of marketing it. And now we just launched PocketNet when Sprint had launched something, 6 months earlier or 7 months earlier. But we were out there before they were. We just didn't market it very well. So I would classify us as a leader. We always have these debates on whether we want to be a leader or we want to be a close follower. There is a cost to be a leader. And in these days of improved performance, improved margins the company to look at, you've got to pick where you want to be a leader, and you've got to pick where you want to be a close follower. We'll always be either the leader or we'll always be the close follower. We'll never be the ones that lag way behind.
In Europe and Asia, the wireless markets have advanced a lot farther along than the United States, and there are a number of reasons for that, but one of the main ones is the infrastructure. They have one, and we have a number of different air interface platforms. Where do you see that happening in the United States? Do you see a convergence, or do you see it remaining multiple platforms?
I see a convergence to a single platform. Will it be identical to Europe's standards? Possibly not. Two things different in Europe, a couple things different. In Europe, the choices are limited, especially between wireless and landline. In certain places, you can't even get landline, or if you can, it takes months and possibly years, and wireless is easy. The other one is with the small communities of different countries. They've had to choose a single standard, where in the United States, we've grown up not to pick a standard, right? We're still on a Dewey Decimal System. We're not on metrics. But I would see in the wireless, because as it becomes...
It seems like business and technology are overlapping each other, And I was wondering, where do AT&T try to place itself in a company that has the most advanced technology or a company that helps businesses?
Probably a company that helps businesses is where our mind and where our focus is going forward, is what kind of services and products can we offer to the business that makes our customers more profitable. So definitely a business, and maybe not a technology innovative company. We would probably be more business. And you will see things as we do. We're looking at doing our own wireless portal, and that's directed towards our business than it is technology. But it's the convergence of this idea of taking a Yahoo and making that an AT&T wireless portal that's mobile, that allows us to do some location-based type services and some other things that make it more attractive and potentially compete with the Yahoos of the world. And we would look at that from a business, not necessarily a technology.
Thank you.
I was wondering what you see as the most important aspect of people development and how you go about doing that.
I think it's a two-sided area. I'm big on developing. I'm big on mentoring staff, big on developing staff. I expect the employees to come to me. Like if I have come to me and say, here's the things I want to do to develop my career. This is where I want to go. You know better than your manager does. So I would expect my employees to come to me and share their plans, and then I will help them, look at, well, here's the avenue you should go, here are some things you should do, and I will help mentor you. It's the one thing I don't like is to come to we have these performance reviews we do twice a year, and have the employee come to me and says, so what are you going to do for my career? I mean, it's your career, it's not my career. I'm willing to help you. You have the ideas. Do you want to be in more of a business and managing people? Do you want to be more in technology? Do you want to get out of IT and run a business? You know that better than I do. And it'd be wrong for me to say, here's what's wrong. I will help you by saying, here's what I think some of your best attributes are and where I think some of your strengths are, and here are some of your weaknesses. But you need to come with that development. And I'm 100% behind that. We're right now going through our budgeting process. It's always a torment. And there's a line on our budgets called professional development or education, and that's a line I don't cut off the budget. So if it's got to be reasonable, but I would never cut that. There's other places I cut what we call T&E, travel and entertainment. I'll cut that, or I'll cut other things out of budgets. But when it comes to professional development, career development, I like to keep that intact.
AT&T is a rapidly growing company. I was wondering what is the largest challenge you face in managing the growth of the company?
Two things, and this kind of dawned on me maybe about a couple months ago, is we're growing and we're competing for you folks, or we're competing for IT professionals, and we're competing against the small companies, the .coms of the world, and small startups. And one of the things that they offer that it's hard to offer as a large organization is that closeness, that intimacy, that opportunity for you to come see me any day of the week. In a small company is easy, in a large company is more challenging. So I've tried to make myself more available and my staff more available to interact with new hires. So when we do new hires, and we did one today, I spent 5-10 minutes introducing myself to new hires. So that helped us acquire people. So one of the challenges is acquiring people as you get bigger. The other one is, which is probably challenging, and if there were some wireless folks here, they would know this real well, is as you get bigger, there are more people who come with more ideas they want you to work on. And trying to prioritize those ideas in a company is extremely challenging when you're real big. When you're small and just have $10 to do what you got to do, you do the basics. When you have a little bit more money and you have a lot more people, you have a lot more ideas, and trying to prioritize those ideas and really get to the things that really add core value to the business are challenging, extremely challenging.
What if you could be far away and still be close to everyone and everything that's important to you? If you could talk to anyone in your family the instant you thought about them, or have a meeting with foreign business associates like you were in the same room, What if you could have the information you need come to you when you wanted it? And you had the power to make all the pieces of your life come together more than you ever imagined. Welcome to the future of wireless from AT&T. Your universe is getting smaller, and staying at the center of it just keeps getting easier. Wireless from AT&T. Your world close at hand.
The University of Washington Business School, located in Seattle, Washington, ranks among the top business schools in the United States. Information Technology Leaders is one of the many ways the UW Business School forges partnerships and reaches out beyond the university. For more information about the University of Washington Business School or Information Technology Leaders, visit informationtechnologyleaders.com.
I'd like to close with a quote from one of the people who has worked for you for a while. Mike is a very good listener who always keeps the greater good in perspective. He's driven more by the team's success than gaining credit for his own accomplishments. On more than one occasion, Mike has had to referee conflicts involving overlapping responsibilities. To the parties involved, they may not have always come away with what they wanted, but they did always get a sense that the decision was appropriate and fair. He's flexible to a point, participative to a point, but decisive at all points. What more could you ask for a manager? What more indeed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.